This episode of Super Pulp Science is brought to you by the Winnipeg Icon Anime Convention, July 14th to 16th, where you can see myself and Gregory's booth, and also by the San Diego Comic-Con, July 20th to 23rd, where you can find the Chasing Artwork booth at booth 1303.
These are not paid advertisements. We just love both these shows.
Attention, citizens. It's time for Super Pulp Science.
This is Super Pulp Science, where we talk about how genre gets made. Full disclosure, our producer, Dan Vadeboncoeur, has told me a different way to hold the microphone, which I do not like. I'm going to...
It's just so we don't get the crackly on the thing
I'm going to
that
reduce
happens.
the clutch on this microphone.
You don't have to grab it so tightly.
It feels too... That's right. I felt
I just
like
don't want you to touch the joint.
like the lead singer of a progressive rock band in the 90s. But I have neither the
King
voice...
Missile? Is that a King Missile reference?
Could be.
Okay, cool.
Could be.
I love that song.
Yes, that's right. This is a podcast about how genre gets made, but it is occasionally a podcast about how to grip your microphone. With me today, long-suffering co-host Justin Curry, known the world over as Chasing Artwork, the aforementioned producer extraordinaire Dan Vadeboncoeur, and myself, Gregory Kmichuk. And today, I want to flip the script a little bit, but in this case, literally. A little backstory for our listeners, if this is somebody's first podcast. Justin and I are both writers and illustrators, and we produce art prints, art canvases, limited edition, specialty art things, as well as writing
Enamel
novels
pins.
and graphic novels.
Don't forget about the enamel pins.
And let's not
It's a
forget
big
about
seller.
the new foray into enamel pins. But usually, Justin and I have had a creative process that is similar in that we have often begun many projects with an image first, what we like to call an anchor image. A picture, a drawing, sometimes it's rough on a napkin, sometimes it's a days of illustration that go into a single image that then begs to have more stories told about it, and that often then sends us on our way to craft the script or the necessary written components. But lately, all three of us have been doing a words-first approach to creating different projects, and I thought that would be an interesting topic to discuss. The difference between projects that come as images first and comic projects that come as words first. How's that sound, Justin?
It immediately made me think of recently on the last couple flights. I have Bluetooth headphones.
Flights from danger?
Sorry?
Flights from danger?
Flights to conventions.
Oh.
I've had Bluetooth headphones, so I haven't been able to plug into the TVs on the flights. So I've watched a couple movies without hearing them at all. And recently, I watched the new Black Adam movie without hearing a word of Black Adam. I watched the movie from a visual standpoint, without words, without music, without anything.
No sound effects.
No sound effects. And
No
just kind of...
bombs.
It was interesting studying the film from just a visual storytelling standpoint. Spoiler alert, I thought the movie sucked.
Can you get enough of the story, though, from just that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
really?
you can, like, really piece it together.
Okay,
And-
well, okay, so it's interesting. Let's set some operational definitions here. I think what Dan is responding to is the notion that a film is a collection of all of these different media together that's supposed to be the film itself. And so if you were to have to watch a movie silently that had sound intentionally, and then you intentionally watched it without sound, it would create a different viewing experience.
I'm not saying it's not true. I'm just saying that some movies you can do that, and some movies you can't.
Yeah, it's
and
fair.
I hazard a guess as to Black Adam not being a movie that does that. Very well.
Yeah.
So
So you could tell, like, I think, like, some of the, like, what was missing from it without the sound, like, the character development were probably, like, shoved in there with one-liners, but
Right.
it didn't come across visually. It didn't like the story didn't work visually, and they probably tried to fix it with some of the words, but like if it's that broken visually, how much can they fix it with the
Okay,
words?
this is an interesting anchor to our discussion because you wouldn't have intentionally watched that movie without sound.
Okay, and
it
so-
was just a situation. No, I think this
Yeah.
is important. But as a result of the way planes are, and if you didn't have a book with you, and everyone's got their frickin' screens on, no matter what you can do on a plane now, you can't look away. You're going to see a movie playing. And so this silent movie played, and rather than do your best to ignore it and doodle, which I've seen you do many times on a plane, you instead doubled down to watch it and study it absent these pieces.
I made the decision, I'm going to watch this silently, and if it's good enough, then I'll give it a chance with sound.
Okay, I see. When you
Like-
get home and in the comfort of your
Yeah,
own
I'm
home.
going to pay attention, watch it silently. If it doesn't work, then
Does
yeah,
it create
then
an
it doesn't work.
intrigue enough to make you want to watch it?
Yeah. Now think of like one of your favorite movies.
Yeah.
If your first exposure to that had been without sound, would it have still been a good experience?
I think one of my earliest favorite movies, The Princess Bride, followed very closely by Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan, in like chronology in my life, seeing both of those. I think they both hold up.
Yeah.
Without,
Princess Bride
Sound.
for sure.
yeah.
Here's the other thing. When I used to work at,
But I haven't watched them without sound, so now I guess that's my homework.
but I bet you could.
Yeah, as long as you can get the visual idea of the story, which you can, I think, from both those films. But again, I haven't done that. Sorry, go on. You were going to say something.
Okay, but
I've-
wait. This also makes me think of movements and moments. So in your story, whether you're doing visual or you're doing it with prose, you're going to have movements, which is the way that a character gets from a place to another place. And then moments, the moments between characters that let you understand what they're really fighting for, what they're really all about. And if I think about those two movies, and these are 80s cuts, but Princess Bride and Wrath of Khan, even as I play them, because I've seen them
You
maybe
could
even
just
100 times.
quickly play them,
I
scrub
can
through
play
them
them,
in your
scrub
mind.
them in my mind. There are tons of movements and moments. So even if you weren't sure what Khan's backstory was,
You're also wearing a Star Trek.
I am. I'm
t-shirt,
literally
right?
wearing a Star Trek, Winnipeg Star Trek
It stands without the sound.
shirt. Yeah, it stands without sound. Like you would know that Khan hates them,
Yeah.
even if you didn't know why. You'd know that he's set on vengeance. You'd know without
He's
sound.
cruel. You know he's cruel.
You know he's cruel, but calculating. You'd also know that his own crew is trying to talk him out of it. There's a ton of exposition moments where he's just lording over them, and he's like, "No, we're going to do this." You would get a whole bunch of that stuff, even if you couldn't hear a word they were saying. Yeah, it's true that you say that. So you said Black Adam absent these movements and moments.
I could tell without sound the major flaws in the film.
Are you a sinner? Do you wish to be saved?
Saved? No. I've come to tell you what I see.
I'll admit, before you introduced this idea of an anchor image, or when you guys started talking about this way back whenever we first started this podcast, it never occurred to me that someone would start it that way. For someone like me, it's always going to start with the writing because I'm not a visual person. I can't draw, so I have to express myself in a verbal or typing way, right?
But like the anchor image, just like that, it's more of a scene. What is that scene that like the whole thing spawns from, right? It's when you're coming up with a story, I doubt many people think like genre first and then this kind of character and then situation, right? You usually think of that one scene of the character pulling a chain up from a well, and at the end of that chain is a torso. And then the torso moves,
What is
right?
this?
Like,
What is this you're talking
He's
about?
I don't
making
know. I'm
something
just
up
making
right
something
now.
up.
Okay.
Okay, so now we have this awesome image of a rainy night and some kids pulling at a chain in down a well, and up from the chain comes
They
half
think it's a bucket's going to come
They
up,
think
but
it's a bucket
instead-
because he dropped something
No,
important
see,
down
you'd
there.
have the bucket, and one of them would notice the bucket off to the side.
Wait, the
has been-
bucket's isn't that the bucket? What are we pulling up
Yeah,
then?
and that's when the torso piece would
And
come
that's when the
and the
torso-
teeth would snap.
And then we had to find a way to get our characters into the bottom of the well,
Yeah.
which is a huge cavernous
So
system.
then the kids would have to untie that.
Okay, this isn't a
writhing
story-breaking
corpse.
episode,
Oh, we
guys.
can't
No,
help
but
ourselves. We can't help ourselves. So if you have these images, right, the point of all of this is that once you have that central conceit, this little glimmer that makes you want to know more, right? You start asking yourselves, as Susie Maloney would say, friend of the podcast, the why this, why now, right? You then go looking for that in your draft. I have a couple of projects that I'm doing based on other people's scripts right now. And I have a project I'm doing that is prose. It has a few illustrative elements, but they are spot illustrations, not substantive illustrations. So it's prose first, and it's really right now. I find this part of my brain, this like quasi fog that occurs, that I've had to change what is normally my writing creative process in order to approach all of these things at the same time. So in the interest of full disclosure or partial disclosure, I have some work for some clients. I have some work for some collaborators, which are not tied to a specific deadline, but the sooner we get them done, the better. And then I have a prose project that has an internal deadline that there's a few people involved in their parts of it. So just trying to be a good collaborator, get all my parts done ahead of time. Which means in the beginning of every day, I have a lot of like, what should I work on first energy? And I get kind of like, the kids are off to school, everyone's where they're supposed to be, my wife's doing her thing, and now I got to get down to it. And I have a complete paralysis in the beginning, unless which I've started to do for the last couple of weeks, I go for a short walk in the morning.
I was just going to say, when I walk the dog, that's when I figure that out. Because I also always wake up like I have 4 or 5 options. I could write, I could work on this painting, I could work on this storytelling, or I could answer, like all those things. Walk the dog. By the time the walking the dog is done, I know what I'm going to do. The other trick that I use often is the night before, I leave whatever I'm going to work on open. So as soon as I open up the computer, that like next task is like ready to go.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I did make the decision the night before. Tomorrow, I'm going to paint these elements. I'm going to get them all propped up, ready to go. That file is open. As soon as I hit the computer, it's ready to roll.
Yeah. So the have-tos of a family life get me kind of spun up in the morning, and then I'm sort of I have a certain momentum, but in the wrong direction, not creatively, but just like all the tasks that go into getting 2 teenagers out the door in the morning. And so I grab my laptop, I grab my notes, and I go for a short walk with the express purpose that whatever's on my mind doesn't matter. Now I'm just going to decide between my front door and this nearby coffee shop, what is the part I'm going to have my writing sprint on. Then I set a timer before I enter the coffee shop. So if there's a line up in there, it's going to eat that time up. It doesn't matter. I only have a set amount of time. I set my timer for an hour and 10 minutes. I come into the shop, I grab a coffee, I sit down, and I just write as fast as I can whatever occurred to me on the walk there. And then I leave that place because I'm only there for an hour. And then I come and I do all the other have-tos that go along with client work and all those other things for the day. So I come to the studio after that. And then the walk from the coffee shop to the studio is about, I don't know, maybe 1.5 kilometers maybe. And in that time, I let all the other like mess of the brain kind of settle out, and I make notes and just get that all straight so that when I get here, I can have the right momentum. But
when you're for writing, when you're figuring it out, are you playing it through your head as if it's a movie?
good question. No.
No? 'Cause that's what I do.
I do that only because I'm writing a movie.
But it makes the most sense to my head, because I think, like, especially back when I was younger, I would listen to soundtracks and make up movies in my head, and then eventually those would like snowball into bigger stories, and I would imagine movies that didn't exist, and then eventually those movies would get good enough that I thought I should try to make a version of them. And for me, that was always visual rather than prose. But now that I'm working on like a bigger prose project, still thing, like I just imagine it as if it's a finished movie, and then I reverse engineer it down to words.
Yeah.
That's how I thought everybody did this.
Well, no, but I think, remember when we talked to J.H. Moncrief about that, she said that's how she writes. She envisions the characters just having a conversation and what they're going to say to each other, and then she writes it down, and she just kind of envisions the whole story and writes it, and that's how people, and many people do write that way. But for me, for writing Meat House, I'm absolutely envisioning this as a movie, because I'm coming at this from it being a movie, so it's make it pretty easy, I think.
So a couple of different things happen for me. I will get lines of dialogue that beg explanation in the exposition. So two characters whom I don't know, I cannot see, I don't know what they look like, I don't know where they are, will just begin speaking to one another. And as they're having that conversation, I'll just start writing it down. And what they're talking about will become clearer as I write it down. And then one of them will usually pose a question to the other that forces me to decide what's true for those characters. And then that shows up in the exposition. And then when I have enough of those, I might end up with, say, 1,000 words like that. Once I have 10,000 words that are like that, I go back and I look at that and say, okay, what order does this go in? And then I rearrange it into a proper, like, sort of beat structure that way, and that usually becomes a draft for me. And in that way, for me, there are no rules in that early draft. There is no direction. There's nothing but whatever's on my mind. And it sounds a little bit crazy, like James Gillespie. He and I are collaborating on this project called The Oncelands, and he's helping me with plot and some sort of setting and some development. So we're just bouncing the plot elements back and forth together, and then I'll go away and write it. And we thought we had, when we did the first draft of our Onceland stories, I thought there was we had a direction, we had a if this, then that, therefore this, and this is what this story is going to be about. And then when I sat down to write it, none of that worked. And instead I came up with this conversation between this old woman and this young man, asking the young man to tell her the story that she already knew, and he had to prove that he knew it. And so then the draft that the two of us had come up with, like the plot, it was like a test. So it was like my subconscious saying to myself, okay, you imagined this story, let's see if you got it right. And it put those words into the mouth of this old woman, asking this young sort of oath keeper to tell the story to her to see if he got it right. And that became the framing device of the story. So James and I would come up with the concept, and then I would try to remember it in a certain way, like a legend, and then I would have a character tell that legend to another character, and that's how those stories came about. If I tried to write them linearly according to our draft, I got nothing.
Jimmy, you've got enough, nearly 20,000.
I could go on winning forever. They can't stop me from winning.
As you're describing this as a visual storyteller, it's like, okay, they're going to have a long conversation about lore. So in the book, they might just be sitting on two rocks having this discussion. That's all you really need in prose. But if this were to be a comic, okay, they need to be visually doing something. So like maybe the one is getting a horse ready while the other's, doing something off to the side.
Yeah,
so we can have
a film. You need the characters doing some kind of action.
Right.
Yeah.
What do they call that? When it's like it's just the dialogue is the most important part, but you need something for your characters to do. There's a term for that. Just busy work.
I
can't
remember. It escapes me at the moment, but it's function.
What do I do with my hands during the scene?
Yeah, it's function in film.
I just think that scene from the movie.
But its function in film is to give actors a way to express character physically while they are expressing another side of their character.
Are they
through
being
dialogue.
gentle with that horse?
Exactly.
Is he being a dick to that horse?
Yeah.
I would just do maybe a flashback and have whatever he's saying visually on the page. So he's describing some battles or some action or something that's happening, and you show that while he's saying it to the old lady.
Do you try to avoid the exposition dumps that are that obvious, though?
Well, there's sometimes you have to do them, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. If you have to set things up at the beginning, right? Is that what you're trying to do? Set things up so people can understand the world right at the beginning?
Prologue.
I mean, that's what you have to do at the end in the drafting, like when you're onto your third or fourth draft, you're I shouldn't say you as in this is some universal truth. What I do in the final few drafts is I go through it and I say, if I knew nothing, what is it that I hope I would know by this point in the story?
You don't want what's the it's like the classic 80s action movie title scroll, right? Like there are these badass ninjas that are the best in the world and they've killed everybody, but there's one left and now we have to find Death Dagger.
Yeah, see the opening of almost every 80s sci-fi movie.
Yeah.
Where they just it's an exposition dump where they just like here's what's happened in the last 100 years.
Well, Star Wars,
world.
that was all kind of copying Star Wars.
Yeah.
Let's be honest. Like that was, it was like meant as an homage in Star Wars to the old serialized things, and then everyone just kind of, that's what how it works. So we copied it, right? So
we can get a bunch of storytelling out of the way with some words.
Yeah.
Well, and that's it, right? You get a bunch of storytelling out of the way with some words, and then, at least in film, you have the luxury of music, lighting, performance, special effects to tell the rest of the story.
But I feel like it's always it's the harder thing to do to not do that. So for example, Iron Giant, we never get any big exposition dump of where this giant 40-foot mech came from, why he's designed for war, like what is back, like it's a complete mystery, and I think that makes the movie far, far better than if it started with an epilogue of like, here's the robots being built, here's what they're for, here's their mission, and here's it being sent to Earth to do X, Y, and Z.
Because it's not germane to the story. Okay, so coming back around to your experience with watching Black Adam, I only know what I know about Black Adam, I know from the comics. Mm-hmm. What I saw in the trailers to Black Adam, which I did not see, did not seem to align too closely with the comics, but having not seen the movie, I can't pass any judgments. What I will say is that the trailer made it seem like it was going to be a pretty cool Justice Society versus Black Adam movie. Is in fact that true? Is there a guy with a golden helmet casting spells?
Oh, yeah. I know all about Dr. Fate. But
I don't know any of this stuff. I'm not a DC guy.
So here's my problems with it from what I saw visually. So Shazam, I thought was quite delightful. Great movie. And what was really interesting about that movie was it's a 12-year-old boy who is now, boom, he's in a superhero body and has godlike powers. And him trying to figure out what that means and what he should do with it. And so there's a lot of, character development and dilemma.
Power, but no responsibility.
Yeah, he's a kid, right? So in Black Adam, same thing. It's a young slave kid set hundreds of years ago. He has a pretty rough life, and he's been given these godlike powers, and is instantly the Rock, like
Dwayne Johnson.
Dwayne Johnson,
not a Rock.
Yeah.
Sorry, I had to make the joke.
Yeah. He's Dwayne the Rock Johnson, and there doesn't seem to be any connection to that kid anymore. Once he's Dwayne the Rock Johnson, that kid never shows up in the film through the actions of Black Adam.
So he once he's the Rock, he stays the Rock for the rest of the
Rock
movie?
forever, and
because he
he's
switches
a
back
completely
and forth
different
in Shazam. And Shazam, he's there's a couple times he goes back
and
to the
I think
kid
that's where the interest comes from.
And the kid is a pretty good actor, I thought. In that movie.
No, the kid's a great actor. The Shazam actor is a great actor, and that's what's interesting about that character. It's a kid with with Superman's powers, right? And in Black Adam, we basically just got rid of the kid as quickly as we could, so we could have Dwayne the Rock Johnson being badass for the rest of the film. And that's all he did. He was just untouchable, undefeatable.
What if there's a really poignant, poetic, beautiful voiceover that tells you all this great backstory?
And
I doubt it. But
email me if there is. Maybe I missed something big. And then to your point of the Justice League, they were all
society.
Society, not the League.
There's
They're
two
not the
different
League.
things.
Not the
I don't know
okay.
how it works.
What's great about kind of what the Marvel movie does is they slowly introduce these characters a little bit at a time,
I don't
right?
know if I've ever been that sassy of a nerd to you. A society? Excuse me?
Drink
He's
more
getting his
coffee.
DC fandom all up in a, because we don't know anything about this stuff. We're not DC fans.
So there's 4 or 5 of them, and they're all introduced. Bang, 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 and now suddenly we're supposed to care that they're getting beat up by Black Adam, who we've known the longest, but we still don't care because he's just this broody-looking badass who's going around killing everything he touches, not being able to be hurt in any way, shape, or form. So the hero of the film has so much plot armor on him, nothing touches him. And
Is
then
he the hero? I thought he was the villain of that
he's
movie.
anti-hero.
Oh, I see.
And then, we just have these 5 new characters that are just like thrown at you one after the other. So maybe in the dialogue, we're getting some semblance of character development with them, but like you're thrown right into it.
It feels the same as they did with Justice League, or the lead up to the Justice League movies, where it was like they were kind of jamming.
You got a
these
little
people
bit.
in.
You got
A
at
little
least
bit.
more of that,
Okay,
right? We got
now,
some Superman
this
and
is
Batman
not-
and Wonder Woman.
This is not a movie review show.
Yeah, sorry, we're getting off track here.
So let's come back around to you're sitting on the plane.
Yeah,
You're evaluating the visuals.
I am.
And what you're feeling is lacking in the series of visuals is that there are no build up to the cool moments. There's just a series of cool moments, and there's not enough time to rest.
They're rushing to that final epic battle part without any of the build up that I think is necessary for you to give you want to care about the characters when they're in that final battle.
I heard it put as a graphic designer talk about rest in an image, that an image should be 30% busyness and 70% rest for the eye. And so you can do that with color, and you can do that with complexity in your illustration. I think that is likely true. The reason I'm bringing it up now is that I started thinking about it in terms of books I like, stories I like to write, stories I like to read, things I've like. That's pretty close. There's about 30% of really intense stuff and 70% of kind of rest, like a way to feel the world of the story enough that you care when that other 30% arrives.
It's also a bit about homogenization. Like, it all seems the same, I imagine, when you're watching Black Adam. It's like, here's a scene, The Rock beats up people. Here's a scene, The Rock beats up people. So it's all the same thing over and over again, which I see in all kinds of film and other media properties as well. So you want to see ups and downs. You want to see different
feel like
things.
He's in danger.
Or just even a variety of imagery, right?
Yeah.
That would be nice.
There are great darknesses, farther than time itself. And beyond the darkness, a light that glows and changes.
Last night I saw the new Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse movie, and I'm not going to say anything about it, but you just nailed it. Like they have these like really great action scenes, and then the quiet scenes are so like it's like a kid and his mom sitting on the roof having a growing up conversation, and the juxtaposition in that film is especially obvious because when like the action happens, it's really visually exciting, and when the quiet moments happen, it's like they took some real artistic licenses. The art direction and the artistic group on that film went above and beyond like most movies that we've seen, and I couldn't recommend it more. But like the quiet scenes, man, great.
Yeah.
Okay, so then let's constructively put that together into this framework. When you're coming up with a story or a project, do the 30% intense scenes arrive first for you, or do the 70% quiet moments arrive first for you? What is your anchor image usually consist of?
The quiet moments,
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think for me also.
At my
It's usually the quiet
storytelling
moments.
core, I think my biggest influence is like those silent 8-minute films that you can find of usually like animation projects, like that are mostly silent, or Pixar shorts would be another big one, right? Like they try to hit you in the feels as much as possible in a short amount of time. That's what I tend to stray towards. That's what I find most exciting, is being able to make somebody tear up with not a whole lot of fluff. around it.
The Pixar short is kind of a nice example because its length is not a detriment to its ability to deliver an enormous story.
Exactly.
Yeah. And it's usually not some bombastic 8 minutes. It's usually quite measured in the build-up. Even if you look at like Love, Death, and Robots, another good short anthology.
A lot of those don't have words. Yeah.
And the best ones actually, well, I mean, it's subjective, I guess. The ones I enjoy the most have a fair amount of quiet world building in them before some weird ultraviolence
Peak
arrives.
storytelling for me is the first 40 minutes of Wall-E.
Right.
Wall-E going about his job. All this world building is done without any words. Eve comes, they form a little relationship like that. It's 45 minutes of the movie. There is 0 words, and so many people hated that. And God, that's like my favorite thing.
Yeah, I love it so much, actually. Yeah, yeah.
But there's still words. Here's the thing: there's still words because somebody wrote a script for that, right?
Yeah.
So they have so you're talking about an anchor image and how to start off. You guys start off visually. You've talked about storyboarding out the story to get a sense of what it is. A lot of people write it out in order to get a sense of what the story is.
So when you're writing it out, okay, I won't say you. So when I'm writing it out, if I know the end result is a graphic novel, my script is just the loosest bones so that I know what I got to put on the page. It's a mnemonic device more than it's a set of directions. I've already figured it all out in my head. Now I just don't want to forget anything important, so I list those things in sometimes bullet points. Sometimes I will get an InDesign document and I'll break out the panels, blank panels, and I'll just write into them things I imagine there.
Okay.
And it's enough for me. And if I were to send that to somebody else, they would. There's nothing actionable there.
Yeah.
Nobody else.
It's
could
not
use
enough,
that,
yeah.
right? But
Yeah.
it's more than enough for me. If I am writing a script for somebody else, I much prefer us not to write a script in the traditional sense where I'm going to go and smash out every panel. I would rather us sit down and discuss, as Justin and I often do, discuss all the beats and then say, unless you come up with something better, but let's just agree that this important moment is going to happen somewhere and this important moment is going to happen somewhere. And you let the person who has to do the heavy lifting of the visuals figure out what that flow is going to be. And then you come in and you adjust accordingly your script. You don't tell them to redo the art. You adjust your script because that's much easier.
Yeah.
Right? To adjust once the flow is there. If you're working for a corporate or a large client that has a very specific idea in mind, you don't have the luxury of saying no to a suggestion that you feel doesn't flow all that well visually. You just have to render it. And so at that point, see our previous discussion about whether or not you're making art if you're working by committee. But there are different considerations. So what I'm talking about, though, right now is the beginning moments. You're writing a screenplay, Dan. You're writing a pretty detailed script so that a book can be pitched in the rarefied air of larger publishers. And I'm writing a prose novel. I'll center my discussion around that for the purposes of our back and forth today. In prose, I'll have dialogue that usually comes first, and then I figure out why anyone would say that and what is the thing that they're talking about. And usually I will also have some visual image arrive that I don't know. I've learned to trust it. Originally, I would just put it out of my head. So if I have two characters talking and I don't know what they're talking about and an image occurs to me, I'll write that down in a separate place in the document.
What do you mean by image?
So
Give us an
I'll
example.
give you a direct example. So in our Once Land stories, there's the old woman, right, talking to the younger man, saying, okay, tell me the story you remember. And she, in my head, the image was of this pile of stones that looked vaguely like a person with birds perched on it. So I just wrote that down. Pile of stones, vaguely like a person, some birds perched on it. Later, I realized through the course of looking at their discussion that the pile of stones was in fact the character from the story that they were going to tell that had returned and been encased in these stones, and the birds were sitting on top of it as a way to let them know that this is a person and not just a pile of stones. But I didn't know that when the image came to me. And it became very obvious as I was writing, and I had this, like, writer's block is the bad way to describe it, and I don't think it exists, but I hit this point where I was like, I just don't know what's supposed to go here. How's it supposed to end? And then I realized I already had the end. I'd written it down long ago in an early draft. I found that little passage, moved it down to the end. I'm like, oh, there it is. That was the stuff that doesn't seem related for me is a big part of my writing process. When I have an unrelated idea, I don't say, well, that has nothing to do with this. I just write it down anyway. Then I figure out where it fits.
Pantsing?
What's that?
Pantsing?
It is a type of pantsing.
It's a type. It's not quite pantsing, but it falls in that category, I feel.
And for the dear listener who this is your first episode, to plot is to carefully list everything that's going to happen in your story and then follow that plot. To pants a story is to just write by the seat of your pants, to just follow whatever the desire of your brain and imagination go in that first draft.
It's there's a couple holes in my script, and it's nice going through plotting it out, just what you were saying before, like the beats, like guard says something rude, gets reaction, then this happens, and like it's just like filler dialogue, like he needs to say something to like piss this other character off. I don't know what that is yet. Maybe I'll figure it out when I write a little bit more.
Right.
But you just need to like get that in there, get that beat in there. You don't have to have the full like that, and you don't have to have it all figured out.
And the cool thing is that that'll come to you at some point. You'll be in the shower or doing something else, and all of a sudden, I know what he can say in that moment. And you'll go and write it down, and so that's cool. The way you can just come up with story elements anytime. Douchey
character says something douchey to sensitive character.
Right.
Sensitive character gets offended. Brave character comes to her defense. Douchey character, like. We don't know what that's a scene from Meat House. We don't know what those words are yet, but that's how the conversation needs to go. You'll figure that all out later, or the actors may
exactly, and that's what I'm trying not to worry about too much when I'm writing a dialogue for this. Is what like, oh, does that sound stupid? Who cares if it sounds stupid? Get it down. They're going to say something as long as it conveys the gist of what they're trying to say and the information or whatever that is. That's all I care about. I can always rewrite the dialogue later and come up with something different. So that's I'm trying not to worry about that too much as I write.
I think that happens often on movie sets. Like the actors will go to the script writer, the director's like, this is not how people talk.
Yeah. Well, that happened on Star Wars apparently, but they still wrote it like that. They still went that way.
It really depends on the type of production.
I just watched Gladiator recently, and apparently I saw a video of what's his name talking about it.
Russell
Crowe. And he said that they started shooting that film with only 20 pages of script. They only had 20 pages that they could agree on. And that was it. And so they started with that, and they wrote the rest.
Between him and Ridley Scott, or
him and Ridley Scott and the screenwriter, I guess.
Jeez.
Yeah. So he said the script was in really bad shape, but they had the idea. That's what I'm saying. Like the script can always be refined. The script can always be fixed, but as long as the idea is good. So they had the idea for the movie. They knew the story. They knew the beats, but the details were awful.
And I'm sure they shot it a bunch of different ways. Right? We're gonna do a take where you're really mean to this character. Then we're gonna do a take where you're compassionate, and then we're gonna do a take where like you just ignore them completely. And then in editing, we're gonna figure out, because we have a lot more to shoot, we'll figure out which one we need later on. So you have those safeties.
David Mamet, great playwright and filmmaker, would often get into heated discussions with the actors working on his projects who tried to ad-lib lines.
Oh, I'm sure he didn't like that.
No, yeah. So it depends on your point of view. And some of the best lines in some of the, I'm walking here.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Ad-libbed.
Yeah, and
you talking
to me is also an ad-libbed line. Look, there's some really great lines that were ad-libbed and come up with, but it depends on how you...
Because they feel authentic in the performance, and ultimately that's the editor helping to craft the film also.
We keep going to film with this discussion,
right?
Eh?
Yeah. So, and I think why that is because film is the most readily available common element for all three of us that we have consumed the most of, right, to be able to discuss it in that way. But we just did a writing sprint here just before Justin came a practice.
I
we've
was
been
writing
doing.
at home as well. I just wasn't here.
Yeah, you just weren't here. It's not the same. Yeah, Lyndon is looking at you sadly. So for the dear listeners, some of the things, because we have a lot of writing projects that are on the go, and it can be difficult to find pure focus. We find peer pressure, pure focus to be a really useful tool lately. And so I'll just literally yell, writing sprint, yell into my phone, set timer, 30 minutes, and then everyone sits quietly in the studio and does nothing but types furiously on their new
He
manuscript.
plays the Mario Kart starting horn at like max volume on the speaker.
Yeah, he just plays a
Dun,
Jeopardy.
dun, dun, dun.
And then we all do our writing sprint. And while a half hour doesn't seem like a lot of time, a half hour where even scratching your nose feels like a waste of time because
It really
everyone
did.
around you is working.
Yeah.
Really positive placed peer pressure, I think. Right? And just for a half an hour. And then everyone can like do whatever they want.
Yeah.
But it also, because I'm the most gregarious probably here in the studio, but we're all chatters also. So it can be a nice way to just turn all the chatter off and just purely focus. And a couple of the sprints a day add up real fast.
I found it helpful. I got through the bulk of a scene doing that, that I was kind of hemming and hawing over, right? It helps you just make those decisions and things that I was, I don't know what I'm going to do with this. Okay, we'll just do this for now and maybe I'll come back to
Yeah,
it later.
just placeholders get you going.
I don't want to do too much of that. I don't want my entire story to be placeholders, but I'm kind of learning where to make those choices and just kind of getting through the scene, getting the characters to a certain point, and then I'll come back and flush it out.
My internal rule on sprints is no outlining and no placeholders.
No.
Just right. Like
Just, yeah.
I did have to refer to my Meat House Bible a bit because I've got the character names written down and some
I had
information.
to look up. You saw me look up on
Yeah.
a map. I had to look up.
Oh, your microphone cut out for some reason.
I had
So
to look up on a map and see where
Would
something
it
was.
would it help Dan to like put together like a visual mood board with like actors and actresses like just kind of plop down like this will be
No.
Gwen and this will be
Not at
George
all.
and no?
no, that would hurt me. I think
Okay.
because there's never. I don't think there's any. If this ever gets made into a movie, then there's not going to be any famous people in it. So I'm not worried about. Anyway.
Well, and also it comes with all those preconceptions. So
Right.
if they're useful to you, then I'd say
I'm trying to write these characters. I've certainly am basing some of these people on real people I know, and their names are certainly based on real people I know. You guys are both in this, but but not the character. Your names, not your characters necessarily.
We have to
but,
guess.
But
no.
what I'm trying to do is keep it somewhat generic so that an actor can fill the.
I want to live, Dan.
Yeah, I don't know about you.
Yeah.
I don't know if your character is going to. The thing is, I haven't actually decided. I've got about 8 characters in this now, and I have not decided. I've got one. Well, we've got one who's playing the final girl in the production of the movie that's being made. But will she be the final girl of the actual horror movie? I don't know yet. I haven't actually decided who to kill.
I think you got to let that happen
Yeah.
as it happens.
Yeah, that's
You know?
right. Yeah, because it's like whoever the house wants first. Really, that's what it goes.
So,
comes
like,
down
I
to.
was working on this. Whatever the house wants, whatever the story wants. I was working on this story. I'm doing a writing sprint. I am describing this, dried out riverside village with collapsed stone buildings and these ominous stone markers. And there's this horrible creature that is going to show up at one point in this scene. And I know it's coming, but I don't feel any tension whatsoever because the character that I have in the scene is the hero, is very capable, is a little bit overpowered, really, frankly, as a character in the story. And so I was feeling no nervousness for them. And so if I'm not feeling it, the
Neither
reader
is the
isn't gonna
audience.
feel it,
Yeah.
the audience isn't going to feel it either. And so I had this nervous character start talking in the story to them. And I knew as soon as I typed it, I have to go revise the beginning because 3,000 words ago, 4,000, 10,000 words ago, there was this character isn't there anywhere. So where did this nervous person come from? And then when I went back and added them as a guide, sort of like that gets picked up along the way and has to be cared for, suddenly the whole story structure made so much more sense to me. And it had there was so much more at stake because now the big OP person with their fancy magical weapon and all this kind of stuff, they're not who I care if they live or die. They're not going to die. It's obvious they're not at risk. But now this side character doesn't really want to be there. just has some knowledge that the main character didn't. Rewriting them as a thread through the whole thing made the whole story.
You needed a Charlie Brown in there. Yeah.
I needed I needed a Charlie Brown.
And in the center of the universe, the eye that sees us all.
But I wouldn't have had that thought if I hadn't first written all those thousands of words.
Yeah.
Right? And so it was much easier to go back and add a character than it was to go back and restart the whole story from scratch. Right?
Now, was it
not to have
difficult to
started
go
at all.
back and find the moments to add that character in, or did you kind of know naturally where to put them?
Just the way that this story is structured, it wasn't difficult because the main character of this one particular story travels by themselves for a good amount of time, reaches this city, gets some directions there. Rather than get some directions, they just picked up a guide there. And so there was a clear place for that character to arrive and provide information. And instead of giving him the information like he did in the original draft, he said, no, I'm not telling you that. I'll take you there.
Oh, of course.
But I'm not going to tell you. And I didn't know why he wouldn't tell him, but he clearly had some motivation, and he makes the guy agree, like, if you keep me alive till we get there, I'll get you there. But that's what we're going to do.
Yeah.
Which is
It's
much
really
more interesting
dangerous.
than like, sure, I'll be your guide.
Yeah.
Follow me.
Yeah.
And so it's very obvious that this one character cannot make it through this dangerous land. It's clearly up to something, but all his information is accurate. They're going the right way. Everything is being found, which means he must have come this way once before. And it begs the question, like, well, he made it there and back once before. Where'd the person that brought him the last time in?
Right.
You know, how did
Yeah.
all those questions have started to arrive right now in my main character's mind. He's having those same doubts, like, wait a minute, what is this guy really up
Cool.
to? And I don't know the answer.
How come
Right?
he's not breaking the cobwebs?
Exactly, those moments, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Pull on that chain. Well, why don't you do it? No, you have to do it, right? That kind of stuff.
Cool.
So prose definitely changes how I would do it. If I was doing it as a graphic novel, I would have thumbnailed out all of those elements. I would have blank scripted, which is how I think about those empty boxes, just blank scripting it out so I would know what the beats are.
It is great being able to go back and forth from writing to storyboarding to writing back and forth. Like, I feel like we have this unfair advantage being able to do both. Like, just coming into a project with only like one or the other, it just, I don't know, it's great being able to go back and forth, knowing that, like, okay, this writing part, this may not work, but I'm going to storyboard it out. And in the storyboarding, I solve the problem that the writing had.
Yeah.
And vice versa.
Yeah, totally true. I can't speak to other people and how they do it now, but when I didn't illustrate, I started doing prose writing, and how I got into illustrating was that bad advice that you should write what you know, but I was writing about things that didn't exist, so I tried to illustrate them so that I would write about what I could see, and I felt that made it a more authentic writing experience. And then at a certain point, I was like, oh shit, I'm making comics.
Oh, shit.
Right?
Words plus pictures equals
Whoops.
comics.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, there's a lot of different ways to get there. But it's also film season here in Winnipeg. Maybe this is why movies are on your mind.
Maybe.
I have been...
What about the writer's strike? Is that not affecting...
well, we're in Canada here.
Oh, okay,
And
so
that's
it's the American one?
The
Okay,
American,
gotcha.
yeah, the Writers Guild of America. But that has not slowed down films and projects already in production here in Manitoba. And on this weekend alone, I got a request to storyboard an entire sequence in the film, a car chase sequence. So, and I know that the person that passed that job my way is a listener to the podcast, so thank you for that. But also, I didn't end up doing it. And then I also got a bunch of character, like, can you do some quick character turnarounds this weekend? Turned that down also. And then I got another thing related to, like, reviewing a script. This is just all in the last 3 or 4 days. It is somebody's some element of how film production is happening in Manitoba. It's crunch time and budget time for everyone, and pre-viz and pre-production is clearly
interesting.
behind schedule everywhere, to the point where they're scraping the bottom of the barrel and reaching out to me even. Right? So, because there are some very talented people who are regularly employed in the province.
They're
so
just too busy.
They're too busy,
Yeah.
which means they're reaching
Yeah.
outside of those things. And none of those projects I could actually... one of them I wanted to do, but I didn't have time to do. And the other two I absolutely didn't... Like, I was the wrong person to ask
Right.
for the job. Right.
Well, that's interesting, and that just shows that the writing process for those projects has already been completed for a lot of it, for the scripts anyway,
Yeah.
which is why they can continue when the strike is on.
Yeah.
Oh man, this is just getting me on a whole AI thing that I don't want to go down today, so we won't go down there. But and yeah, this is just a huge growing part of our industry here in
See
Winnipeg.
future episodes written by an AI.
Well, we're just gonna have an AI host the podcast from now, and I think we'll just do that. And then
I am Justin Curry.
anyway, yeah, we could wrap things up. Do you have anything else you want to talk about?
As long as we don't wrap up with a suggestion that we should wrap up.
No. I'll cut that out. I always cut that stuff out. Don't I always cut it out? I thought I did.
think so. Yeah, you think so. Okay, so we're coming up to the end of our hour together, dear listener. And I'm sure that you have lots of different ways in which you create projects, consume media, in both words and pictures, or film and television. And so what I will do is I will ask my two friends here in the podcast, if you had to or were forced to choose only one ability to write or draw that you would have for the rest of your life, and you would have the other one closed off to you, which would you pick?
I write already, and I cannot draw, so that's already.
But what if you could?
I would still write.
What if the great shrouded figure, instead of saying Shazam, you said something else, and you could
I could automatically
draw
draw
really well.
as good as Justin.
Yeah.
I would still write. I think I'm still more comfortable
Still
writing.
write.
So do I get to take all my meager little writing skills and drop them into the art bucket?
You could
Is
be
what
as good
you're
as
saying?
Shakespeare is what he's saying. You could have best
which
the
would you
best
rather?
writer
But
ever.
if you could only do one, you could write or draw.
Yeah, it's gonna be drawing.
You would draw. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. I asked you because I was hoping
can't decide.
each of you would have a wise
Well, we
answer.
said each said our own thing, and
Yeah.
I can totally see that. But you do both, and you do both like. I don't want to say equally well, but like equally as much, I would say. Like
I
you
definitely
really,
put as
certainly
much
in the last
effort
couple of
into
years,
both. Yeah.
as you started the Automatic Age and have started more prose projects, you've now put as much work into prose as you have into comics. So
Well, interestingly, I've put way more effort into prose. Just it's taken much longer to yield to me public results.
oh, okay.
Like I started the Imagination Manifesto as a novel,
Right.
wrote it as a novel, wasn't good as a novel, it became a graphic novel. Much better as a graphic novel than a novel. I wrote Infinitum, started it as a novel idea. Much better as a graphic novel. So, and I have a few, 5 or 6 novel drafts that were great exercise, but they are bloody awful. And then I have a few that I think were good exercises that could be good if I cared enough to go and do the hard work of polishing it. And then I have sort of 2 or 3 novel projects right now. One that's at a first draft, sort of just sitting stage. I really like it. I think it's a strong first draft. I think I've got the makings of a good book there, but I'm just letting it sit for a bit. I want to forget it so that I can read it again fresh.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm working on 2 other prose projects right now that are just words and no pictures. So I'm better at it now. But it's like I said, it's taken me a lot longer to feel like the writing was good enough.
Yeah, but you said you started writing a novel.
Yeah.
Like Imagination.
Yeah, I never
Manifesto.
thought I would be an artist.
That
Not
was way
ever.
back when. So yeah, you kind of started out, then you realized you were making comics. You leaned into that, and you've made comics, and now you're coming back around to the prose side. You kind of, returning to.
Yeah, but like in a day or a week or a month, whether or not publicly anyone ever saw the work I was doing, I've always been writing
Right.
and working on
Right.
drafts and tinkering with writing. It's just part of healthy Gregory's mind. I mean, air quotes healthy, right? But it's how I order my thoughts and ideas.
Yeah, if you let those ideas pile up, it builds like a frustration of like, I've got these great ideas. If they can't just live in your head.
Yeah, and I mean,
got-
even if they're not great, they're in there.
Yeah.
So you got to get them up.
You got to
make
clear
room.
that space.
Yeah, clear that space.
Get
up.
them down.
So, all right. So you would never give up illustrating, and
No.
you would never give up writing. And I guess since I wasn't able to make the decision, the genie would trap me in the bottle and live free on Earth. I think is how this ends.
I've thought out the scenario if I lose my right hand, how I would go about getting equally as good with my left hand as quickly as possible, so I could get right back to things.
Anytime I'm frustrated about how a project is going or how long it's taking, I think about this film I saw called The Diving Bell and the Butterfly. The Butterfly and the Diving Bell.
Quite the name for a film.
Yeah, and it's about a writer who is paralyzed and he can only write by trace. Like he looks at the letters on a word board and someone else transcribes the direction he's looking at.
Oh my God.
One word at a time. And he wrote the movie that you're watching, and he
Goodness.
wrote the novel that the movie's based on by just looking at the letters one at a time and having the mental fortitude to compose at that slow a speed articulately enough to make such beauty and craft.
Man.
I think about that all the time. Like, shut up, Gregory, you're fine.
Yeah.
Right? Everything's
Maybe
fine.
Neuralink will be ready by the time that happens to you. You can just
What do you mean by the time it happens to you?
in that scenario.
Ouch. Okay. But whatever world, future, or AI consciousness you embody when you're hearing this podcast, this has been Gregory Kmichuk encouraging you all to join the fight and make comics.